to continue believing the globe Earth lies. We're expected to believe that the liquid-like atmosphere, on the macro level, atmosphere behaves just like a liquid, but we're expected to believe that the thin, unconnected to the Earth atmosphere many miles into the air, of course, makes no difference, but this thin air is supposedly stuck to the rotating frame of reference with the face of the Earth somehow. First of all, if that was actually the case, then all westbound flights would have to fight against an immense 1,000-mile-per-hour headwind, which would easily tear the plane from ass to elbow, while the eastbound flight would enjoy a gargantuan tailwind all the time, every time, no matter what. Now, this doesn't actually occur. Westbound flights have either headwinds or tailwinds depending on the atmospheric conditions. Same thing goes for eastbound flights. So the argument about the atmosphere spinning with the ground, it doesn't make any sense. Nowhere can you demonstrate gases or even liquids which somehow mold around and fix themselves to a rotating sphere, but that's besides the point. Everyone agrees that the higher you gain in altitude, the thinner and thinner the atmosphere becomes. Then how is it possible that the atmosphere many miles into the air where the two airplanes fly, how is it that such atmosphere remains rotating along with the face of the Earth at over 1,000 miles per hour near the equator? For starters, if the Earth was a spinning globe, then the atmosphere would need to accelerate faster and faster eastward in direct proportion with the altitude gained. But to top that all off, how is it possible for the upper atmosphere to even exist, directly adjacent to the vacuum of outer space? Globists argue that the atmosphere is all neatly fixed to the rotating frame of reference, along with the face of the Earth, right up to the lower magnetosphere, where our atmosphere ends at infinite space begins.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls? I'm Julius Sumner Miller, and physics is my business. And our business today has more than ordinary enchantment, and I will go at once to it. Consider the following. I have a tin can with some water in it, under which I have put a burner, so that the water has now been boiling for a time, as evidenced by the water vapor seen here condensed, and we call it steam, so that what remains in the vessel now is some water, less than before, and some water vapor. Now I'm going to take the burner away and stopper up the can, and we will witness an astonishing and absolutely astonishing thing. If we listen very carefully, we will hear a certain flexing of the can. What is happening? Some of the water vapor is condensing, the pressure is getting less in the can, and the atmosphere is taking hold. And atmospheric pressure is an astonishing thing. I will hasten the process by pouring some cold water on it. And this is an experiment you can do with absolute enchantment yourself. Here it is. I am going to take the burner away. I am going to stopper this up. I'm going to put it down here. Listen. Oh, but watch it. I'll hasten the process. Oh, there it is. Let me turn it around. There it is. And I say that is something to bear witness to. That is fantastic. The push of the air, staggering in its consequences for the human race. Now listen. The water is boiling inside that can at reduced pressure, at a much lower temperature than 100 degrees centigrade, because the pressure inside is less than 1 atmosphere. This is fantastic. Fantastic. Let me show it to you another way. Here I have another tin can, and I'm going to connect this tin can to a vacuum pump, which permits me to pump out some of the air, and just a little of it. I could never pump it all out. If I pumped for 1,000,000 years, I couldn't get it all out. Why? Too many molecules in there. But let me... There it is. There it is. There it is. The push of the air. Staggering to witness. Staggering. Show it to you another way. take a look at another piece of apparatus. I have a funnel, and across the top of it is a sheet of rubber tubing, as from an automobile inner tubing. The air inside is at atmospheric pressure. I'm going to connect the vacuum pump here and reduce the pressure inside from atmospheric less and less and less and less. And the rubber sheet, suffering the forces, the push of the air, will be depressed inside deeper and deeper and deeper. And indeed, if it can endure the reduction in pressure and the push of the atmosphere, I shall be surprised. Very likely, it will be torn apart. Here it is. There's the rubber tube. I am going to connect this. Now, I'm going to reduce the pressure. There it is, getting pushed in. There it is, getting pushed in. Oh, man, this is something. I'm going to stop it a minute. Let's get a tight shot, if you will, of that. And notice the enormous push of the atmosphere. Fantastic. Now, I'm going to evacuate more and more and let the push of the air push that more and more. And I'm going to step aside because when this does indeed burst, it has a detonation which could, well, unseat this building. That'd be very good. Oh, I like to do this once in a while because it adds to the drama of the matter. It adds to the drama. Oh, there it went. There it went. I hadn't expected it, really. But notice the enormous forces of the air. How enormous? Well, only about 15 pounds per square inch at sea level. Let me remind you of the consequences. The ordinary human being has about 3,000 square inches of surface. 3,000 square inches of surface. 3,000 square inches. If you skinned an ordinary human being, laid out the skin and measured the projected area, it'd be about that. On every square inch, there's about 15 pounds. 45,000 pounds is the push of the air on me. Over 20 tons. Is there any wonder why at the end of the day a fellow goes around all worn out, carrying that load of air? Now, to show you further the consequences, consider these things, which we need to look at sharply, acutely, circumspectly, because what is said about them is always wrong. They are called suction cups. Suction cups. And I must advise you to put the word suction out of your vocabulary. It is unacceptable. Why? Because there is no suction, no such force. What do? Let me squeeze them together, face upon face. And what have I done? I have squeezed the air out from between them. Now, why are they held together? They are held together because of the push of the air. I could compute it very readily. If, let us say, I have squeezed out all the air inside from between them, all I need to do is measure their area. Pi r squared is the area of a circle. And that area in square inches times 15 pounds per square inch. Indeed, it turns out that about 300 pounds is necessary to pull these apart. There, about 300 pounds necessary to pull them apart. Of course, look at the usefulness. Look at that. Indeed, regarding the usefulness, the next time you watch people who change big panes of glass in department store windows, you will notice the pane of glass weighs half a ton and 3-4 men carry it. How? By fixing a so-called, forgive me for the use of the language, so-called suction cups, and then they carry it around. The push of the atmosphere. Now, I used a vacuum pump in this, and you should read about Otto von Guericke, Guericke, who in the 16th century invented the vacuum pump. And I want to show you his first one, if we can get a tight shot of that. There we are. Notice, here is a pump with a piston and 2 men are drawing on it, And he reports in his report to the societies, the scientific societies, that there was first a slight hissing as by bees and birds, and then bang, the cask collapsed. Here is another one showing the same. Fantastic. Those two hemispheres put together, the original Magdeburg hemispheres. And here is a picture of von Guericke. So we should pay him tribute. We should pay him tribute. Now, I have spoke of the Magdeburg hemispheres. Let's take a look at them. Here they are in replica, two hemispheres made of steel, which I put closely face to face, and then I connect the vacuum pump, and the valve is open, and I take out some of the air. I take out some. Never all, could never take it all out. Then I'm going to close the valve, shut off the pump. Now I'm going to try to pull them apart. Never, not one man alone, indeed two could hardly do it. So I'm going to do something. Obviously the pressure inside is too low. The push of the atmosphere outside is too big. I'm going to do something. Watch, listen. I'm going to open the valve instantaneously. There. Now what did I do? Oh, some say you let some of the vacuum out. Oh, that murders me. As Macbeth doth murder sleep. Didn't let any of the vacuum out. I let some air in. Still too much. Let more of the vacuum out. Oh, now I let so much out that all of it's out. And so we have the Magdeburg hemispheres, a classical demonstration historically of atmospheric pressure. One more very dramatic one. On an earlier program, I showed this when I talked about inertia. But I want to do this now because it is a demonstration of atmospheric pressure. You see, ladies and gentlemen and boys and girls, what I'm trying to do is not teach any physics in these recitations, but rather stir your interest by events which are dramatic for the soul. Here is a sheet of paper, about 20 inches one way and 30 the other, 600 square inches. On each square inch, 15 pounds of air. 600 times 15, 9,000 pounds of air. And you know, as I did before, I'll do it once again. I cannot move the weight of that air. There it is. And I say that is staggering to contemplate, the push of the air. Of what usefulness is this? Oh, well, without air, birds couldn't fly and airplanes couldn't fly. Indeed, talking about flying, here is an instrument called an altimeter or an altimeter. What does it consist of? It consists of a little chamber which is highly evacuated. I'll try and draw that little chamber which is highly evacuated. Here it is. Highly evacuated, and it has a lever system on it with a scale. Now, if we go high into the atmosphere, the air inside expands a little, the cover lifts up and pushes the lever down, so we get a reading of the altitude in terms of the pressure of the air. Or, if you wish, another use made of the atmosphere, which has so much to do with the events of weather. Here is an aneroid barometer, which has inside it exactly the same thing. The response of the chamber to increase and diminution of pressure gives rise to a reading, and I invite you to look up the word aneroid, because what does it mean? It means without, a meaning not, and neros, wet, without wetness, so it is not a mercury in glass barometer, but a dry barometer. And talking about a mercury in glass barometer, here's something you can do. Take a long glass tube about 1 meter long and fill it with mercury. It's closed at one end, fill it with mercury. Then take a vessel in which some mercury resides, turn the tube upside down, of course with your finger across the open end, submerge the open end in this vessel of mercury, and take your finger away. Remember, the tube is filled with mercury.
For starters, if the Earth was a spinning globe, then the atmosphere would need to accelerate faster and faster eastward in direct proportion with the altitude gained. But to top that all off, how is it possible for the upper atmosphere to even exist? directly adjacent to the vacuum of outer space. Globists argue that the atmosphere is all neatly fixed to the rotating frame of reference, along with the face of the Earth, right up to the lower magnetosphere, where our atmosphere and flights would have to fight against an immense 1,000-mile-per-hour headwind, which would easily tear the plane from ass to elbow, while the eastbound flight would enjoy a gargantuan tailwind all the time, every time, no matter what. Now, this doesn't actually occur. Westbound flights have either headwinds or tailwinds depending on the atmospheric conditions. Same thing goes for eastbound flights. So the argument about the atmosphere spinning with the ground, it doesn't make any sense. To continue believing the globe Earth lies. We're expected to believe that the liquid-like atmosphere, on the macro level, atmosphere behaves just like a liquid, but we're expected to believe that the thin, unconnected to the Earth atmosphere many miles into the air, of course, makes no difference, but this thin air is supposedly stuck to the rotating frame of reference with the face of the Earth somehow. First of all, if that was actually the case, then all westbound ends at infinite space begins.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls?
Nowhere can you demonstrate gases or even liquids which somehow mold around and fix themselves to a rotating sphere, but that's besides the point. Everyone agrees that the higher you gain in altitude, the thinner and thinner the atmosphere becomes. Then how is it possible that the atmosphere many miles into the air where the two airplanes fly, how is it that such atmosphere remains rotating along with the face of the Earth at over 1,000 miles per hour near the equator?